right, here we are. It's Hump Day, Wednesday in America, Wednesday morning, and we are yet again back at it without Mike Renner, my usual co-host. He just got married. He's on his honeymoon. He's doing things with his beautiful bride, and I don't blame him. He should enjoy himself. I've got Jonathan Jones here, NFL lead insider with CBS, obviously my teammate on Tops. For those of you who watch us during the season, JJ hops on every Monday. We talk about NFL news and notes, and I figure we'll just get right into it. First off, how you doing, JJ?
Man, Kyle, I'm great. I'm so happy. It's been a minute since you and I could do this. I think the last time was when I was down in Florida after the league meetings, right? So like late March, early April. So happy to see your beautiful face.
Yeah, a lot has transpired since then. And I believe one of the big stories, obviously, and I hate to start off with in memoriam, but, Jim Irsay, one of my favorite owners in all of major sports, obviously passed away. And with that comes, a succession plan. And there's new people in charge. So ownership is now in the Irsay daughters' hands. Carly Irsay Gordon, Casey Foyt, and Kaylin Jackson. Give me what you got on the Colts ownership, because in the United States we don't have the monarchy. Okay, we don't have the pomp and circumstance that the Queen and all of her family members get to enjoy in England. But here, our royalty is sports teams' ownerships. And I feel like the Colts is one of the blue-blooded American sports teams. And with that, obviously there's turnover. So with that, what you got?
Yeah, Jim Irsay, obviously one of a kind, right? We all followed his tweets, going to miss those tweets. I don't have many people on tweet alerts. Jim Irsay was somebody I had on tweet alerts. You never knew what he was going to say at any point, right? And in fact, during the press conference yesterday with his daughters, the three sisters, the new ownership group of the Colts, I think Carly Irsay Gordon just said something to the effect of, I learned from my dad not to tweet or something like that. So I don't know that will continue, but these three sisters have been a part of the Colts organization their entire lives, right? And they always knew that they were going to be a part of the team. Obviously, their father's death happened much sooner than anyone had hoped for or expected. However, they did anticipate this. And so there has not been, there won't be any sort of estate plan and, this is going to get ugly and you sell your third to me or anything. That's not what is happening right now. So that is very fortunate. Carly Irsay Gordon, she is the one who was in the middle of the press conference. She's the one that you have seen, if you have a hawk eye with on the sidelines during games with the headset on, sometimes with the play sheet, right? The wristband.
Yes.
And you know what, Kyle? I
forgot about that, dude.
I know, like, she anticipated this question. Someone asked her about that. And I guess she's never been asked about it on the record before. But she more or less said, look, when I became more involved with this team, I wanted to know every facet of it. She's at almost every practice. She has an office. She's been there for a long time. I've seen her at a number of league meetings, right? And she said, I want to know if somebody, she said, is full of BS or not. I want to know because I'm hearing the play call, I'm starting to understand, I'm asking questions. And now when it comes time on Monday, when the coach is sitting in my office or when we're considering cutting a player or anything like that.
She has a thought.
I have a thought. I know what happened in that moment. You can't, throw anything over my eyes. And so I thought it was an interesting question. She said more owners should do it. I don't think that they should. But she said it saves her from potentially making $1 million mistake.
I think that there's a fine line you walk as an owner when you are, what is it, seen and not heard, or, not seen but heard, maybe at the podium. Sometimes when these owners are around the players, the talent, it can get kind of strange. And obviously those are the people that are in charge of the entire organization. But having spent time in Chicago, George McCaskey always was around and wanted, as Carly Irsay Gordon was talking about, she wanted to, be able to differentiate bullshit from the real. And I respect that. I respect that about Carly, and, nothing but the best of luck to the three women who are going to be taking over Colts ownership. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills signing of Shaq Thompson, longtime Panthers linebacker, obviously somebody that you're well-versed in his career. What do you make of the Bills signing Shaq Thompson?
Man, I went and I was looking this up the other day because I covered the Panthers from 2012 into 2016. So week 1 of the 2016 season, they went to the Super Bowl, played the Broncos, lost. Week 1 on Thursday Night Football, they faced the Denver Broncos in Denver. So I remembered covering the team when they drafted Shaq Thompson. You know who else remembered drafting Shaq Thompson? Is Sean McDermott, who was the defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers then, and Brandon Beane, who was in the front office with the Carolina Panthers at that point, under, first Marty Hurney and then Dave Gettleman. And now, of course, both of these two guys are running the Buffalo Bills. So Shaq's coming off a legitimate injury, right? He's coming off that Achilles. He's taking it slow in OTAs and minicamp, but he's somewhere where the calls are going to be familiar. There's going to be a lot of familiarity for him, for someone who, 9 years was with the Carolina Panthers, only knew one place.
10 years. Yeah.
I mean, look, I like to pick up for Buffalo. You get veteran depth, a guy who knows how to do it. You don't have to have him out there week 1 or anything like that. Let him build up, and hopefully you get the best version of him when you are playing meaningful football. And I say meaningful football. You go back to last year, right, Kyle? Like at Thanksgiving, they had already wrapped up the division.
Yeah.
So maybe they're not playing meaningful football in December. I don't know, but obviously this is a team that's going to be playing in January, and Shaq Thompson will certainly help them.
The Bills, it seems to me, are trying to compile a roster of guys who will not be overwhelmed when that moment, when the rubber meets the road, happens in their season. And, the MO of the Buffalo Bills has been, well, we're a damn good football team. And then some moment comes along in the playoffs and they can't reach for it. They want as many guys like Shaq Thompson as possible. It's, the Bosa signing was a big statement that they want to have guys come playoff time. Shaq Thompson is one of those guys, being a decade-long pro. And you look from 2019 to 2022, he was averaging over 100 tackles per year. So the production's there. Then he had the fibula. Then he had the Achilles. These things come in bunches. So, for him, and as a fan of football, I root for him to get healthy and for the Bills to get some help there from Shaq Thompson. And now we're going to take a little turn to my guy, Aaron Rodgers. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Aaron Rodgers. And I've been a defender of Aaron Rodgers at times. And sometimes you and I have spats about it, not necessarily because you don't like Rodgers, but maybe I'm just in love with his talent. And, I lose sight of some of the things he may be up to. First off, he's married. That was a big surprise. And of course, he made a way to exponentially gain traction for his press conference. He's really good at that. We haven't talked about Aaron Rodgers, the football player, and the Pittsburgh Steelers and what it means for them. I think that it immediately makes them competitors. Obviously, it's going to be a team that's punching up against the Blue Bloods in the National Football League, particularly in their division. But when you've got a guy like Aaron Rodgers, if you see these defenses once in the division, you can usually have some success in the second go-around. For a guy like A-Rod, I can see that happening. But what do you think about Aaron Rodgers being back? And what's up with the deal?
So first of all, shout out to my dear friend Brooke Pryor of ESPN for asking him the question about that ring on his ring finger. We had seen that in a couple photos. She asked, is it an Oura ring? And he was like, no, that's a wedding ring. And said it'd been a couple of months. So, good for him. All those things.
Spring wedding.
Yeah. Were you there?
It's good that it wasn't in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear podcasts are done about stuff like that. I like the deal for the Steelers. I think I want to give Aaron Rodgers some credit here because a lot of folks in the media have certainly taken their shots at him, and some of it's been deserved. Some of it is undeserved, all those things. He has said since his time in Green Bay that he will take less, and he has taken less money each of the past 3 years. He took a lot less money. I think it was almost like a $30 million pay cut to facilitate the trade to the New York Jets, right? Now, I'm not saying he was doing this out of altruism, right? He wasn't donating the money to charity. He wanted to go play. He said he was going to go take less money. He took less money. If he wanted to get more money from the Pittsburgh Steelers, I could make a really strong argument that he could make a lot more money for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Daniel Jones is making more money from the Indianapolis Colts than Aaron Rodgers is from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
And remember, he was granted his release. He knew of his release the week of Super Bowl, right? So we're talking February. Now, he had his personal things and he's talked through that. But if he wanted to just say, yeah, guys, I want to go sign somewhere middle of March, start a free agency, what would he have fetched? 25, 30 maybe? Yeah. But he was straight up with folks. He took his time. There was one chair left in the musical chairs, and it was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's where he wanted to go, right? Yep. So I do want to give him credit for that, and it is a deal that $10 million guarantee, 13 point something in base. You're going to have some incentives that are all about playtime and playoffs.
Get him to 19.
To get you to 19 and a half, right? And so, look, it's also easy to do that, right, Kyle, when you have made 15 years of top of the market, at the top of the position, at the top of the market. But all that said, I think that the fit, ultimately, I've been surprised that people have been so down on the Steelers, even before his signing, because I have treated it as though he was going to be the quarterback of the Steelers, right? So, he wasn't there during voluntary work. Would you have liked him there? Every coach says, yes, of course we would have liked him there. There's no coach who says, nah, he's good. Of course you want him in your building and in your program. But I think he makes this team better. I like what they have tried to do along the offensive line. They're going to have to get another pass catcher. And I don't know if that's wide receiver, and I don't know if that's tight end. They're going to have to get another pass catcher, and they know that. And they've been lowballing teams when they make a call saying, hey, how about this guy? And they're like, no, we're not doing that for a conditional 6th-round pick, right? So they'll get there. But when I look at Rodgers in the second half of last year, was he an all-pro the second half of last year? No, he wasn't. But he didn't.
He was a top 12 quarterback, top 13 quarterback.
So if you continue that trajectory, which I don't know that there's any guarantee, at 41 years old, 2 years removed from an Achilles, that he's going to continue on that trajectory. But if he can almost
he'll be better physically this year than he was last year. I can tell you that as an athlete who's had to rehab from big-time lower body injuries. Aaron Rodgers is going to be better. And I have to point this out about the Pittsburgh Steelers, the way that roster is constructed. They're going to play damn good defense. That's the way the Steelers always do it. If they can get TJ Watt in a helmet week 1, they're going to be just fine defensively. That defensive line's been invested in over the last few years. With Aaron Rodgers, you need some studs on the offensive line. Give him time to be able to develop the play, make those amazing throws. With the New York Jets, they had what was that movie with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold, where it was a bunch of old operators that ended up getting together and they, saved the day or whatever. That was the squad they had in New York. They had a lot of the elder statesmen at the offensive line spot. When I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got Broderick Jones returning home to left tackle. Troy Fautanu is going to be the right tackle. He didn't play last year. Zach Frazier is a top 5 center in football. They have the blueprint to have a very good offensive line. And my guy, Pat Meyer, is the offensive line coach. He was the assistant O-line coach when I got drafted. He's an Aaron Kromer disciple. You know how I feel about Kromer's.
You love Kromer.
And Pat Meyer's brilliant. He's awesome with blitz pickup. He's somebody that I think can have those high-level cerebral conversations with Aaron Rodgers about blitz pickup, protections. I think Rodgers really gets off to that. I think he respects guys who can have those conversations with him. This offense is going to be fun. The one thing that scares me, not enough pass catchers.
Not enough. They'll get some guys. And like right now, no one is selling because you're not buying at the price that they want to sell at. They'll get there. It'll probably be in July. It's not going to happen anytime soon.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to hit some minicamp burning questions with my guy, the insider, Jonathan Jones. Stick around.
They want to take this place from us. My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Okay, with minicamp, there's all kinds of musical chairs, people talking about leaving, people wanting money, people holding out, and it's become the land of the holdouts here in the last few days. Trey Hendrickson, TJ Watt, Terry McLaurin, Jonnu Smith in Miami. I'll start with the Jonnu Smith thing. Okay. You're in the second year of your deal, man. You're in the second year of your deal, okay? You just put pen to paper like 16 months ago. play at least another year and then complain. I'll let you take the floor here. Let's start with Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati.
Well, are we starting with Trey or are we starting with Jonnu?
I wanted to get that out about Jonnu.
Yeah, okay.
Because I was like, dude, you just signed a deal. Okay, buddy?
Yeah. Now, it was a 2-year deal, right? So, I mean, he's now halfway through it, right? And he outplayed that deal. We all know it, but it's a deal that you signed. And now, he's about to be a free agent. He wants to capitalize on that and all those things. Yeah, sure. Then you add in the fact that there's probably a team out there who is willing to trade for you and pay you. And so, well, okay, look, I want to be here in Miami. Guys, you don't have to give up any draft capital. Just pay me a little bit more. Give me a little bit of a raise based off what I did last year. That's his argument. We'll see if it winds up happening, right? Trey Hendrickson.
Yep.
I do not know how this is going to end. And I say that because you have a Bengals team, and I think we're going to talk even more about the Bengals. We can call them cheap relative to the rest of the NFL. Okay. We can just say that. They go out and they paid Joe Burrow last year. They paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins this year. And what they have in Trey Hendrickson, I'd be really interested to get your thoughts on him as a player. I think that they view him as an incredibly good sack artist, right? Who you don't know that production is going to continue at 31, 32, but not that good against the run, average against the run. And so you're all going to look at the sack numbers, but how does he impact the game, right? Max Crosby at $35 million a year is a guy that on Monday, when you know you're playing him on Sunday, you were starting the game plan for him.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett at $40 million a year, you have to know where Myles Garrett is at all times, right? Trey Hendrickson, in my talks with coaches around the league, is not that type of player. That doesn't mean that he is not worth
Trey will get a sack and a half a game, and you can set your watch to that. But to your brilliant point, when you think about what the Bengals really struggle with, it's not rushing the passer. It's the ability to stop the run. And if you can't stop the run in the NFL, you're going to bleed out. I liken it to getting a cut on your arm, the run game. Like if you give up a big run, if you give up any run, first quarter especially, it's like you're bleeding. And if you don't have a bandage for that, and that's run defense, you're going to bleed out. You're not going to be able to survive the whole game. So for the Bengals, they have to prioritize and weigh their options, because a guy like Trey Hendrickson, to your point, he could get 19 sacks a year. And I do think he's going to have another year of production like that, because that's his game isn't reliant upon significant ankle flexion or the ability to change direction or a guy with a sexy deep bag of tricks. He runs about 2 rushes, and you either are going to block him or you're not going to block him. Another guy who did that really well was Sue on the inside. He didn't have many pitches, but good luck hitting the fastball, man. And that's what Hendrickson hits him with. It all comes down to what the Bengals see as his value in the run game, which is something I haven't really talked about the last few days. That's a great point.
And so because of that, I don't know that you're going to be able to properly assess his number, right? Because this is his last bite at the apple. So he's going to want a multi-year guarantee, something that the Bengals don't like doing for anybody.
Yep.
And you're not going to want to trade him, because how is his value going to be assessed by another team? And so no one, if you are going to trade him, what we just talked about in the last segment, no one is giving you fair compensation right now. It is after the draft. Everybody's going into vacation. Nobody needs a pass rusher right now. And lastly, when you do get a pass rusher, you know this, Kyle, you can bring in a pass rusher on Saturday and he can play on Sunday.
Yep.
So there is no rush. Nothing, I don't think, is going to happen.
That's a great point. That's what we used to, in the offensive line room, we prided ourselves on being one of the more intelligent units on the football field. And usually we shared a wall with the defensive line room. So like on the other side of the wall is the defensive line room. And I had a coach who used to say that they were in wood shop. They were just over there making bird houses all day. Just a bunch of slow blinking droolers over there across the hallway, down the hallway. But to your brilliant point again, as a D lineman, you can just show up the day before the game and go get the quarterback. Khalil Mack showed up Wednesday, Week 1, 2018. He had like 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and like a touchdown against the Packers. And we were all like, I guess practice isn't really something you need to do. Okay, so let's move on to TJ Watt. We can do TJ Watt quickly, and I want to ask you about Terry McLaurin as well.
Yeah, TJ Watt, look, he's going to be a Steeler. He's going to remain a Steeler. There's no doubt about it. The Steelers waited too long in getting this deal done. It further escalated when you go and trade for DK Metcalf and pay him $30 million. TJ Watt, if it's not going to be the quarterback, TJ Watt has to be the highest paid player on your team. He just has to be. And he is a guy who impacts games. He is the Max Crosby. He is the Myles Garrett level player. And so if they could have gotten this deal done, let's say last year when Bosa got his with the Niners or whatever, that's $34-ish million a year. So you could have gotten it done there. Now you have Myles Garrett at 40, right? You got Danielle Hunter at, I think, 36 and change. Like,
the longer you wait.
And you know he's a guy. You know he's a guy that you're going to play. He started in every game the last 2 years, 17, right? He tapered off in his sack production down the stretch last year, but
he's seen what people do to him in protection. It's so, like I had to prepare for TJ Watt. You have to allot 3 human beings to make sure that he is not destroying your game plan. And I want to point this out about these pass rushers, particularly a guy like TJ Watt, who I know has a reverence for the game of football and the history of the National Football League. You know, we're friends with JJ. We work with him on Sundays. JJ's the same way. If it came down to dollars and cents, he would put his legacy over dollars and cents. So for a guy like TJ Watt and all pass rushers, what do we remember these guys for? It's their sack number. Okay. It is and always will be the sack number.
Yep.
So if you're holding out, you've missed week 1, you missed week 2, you missed week 3, that is 210. That is 140 opportunities to go rush the passer. You know how many sacks a guy like TJ Watt could get with 140 opportunities, especially week 1, feeling fresh. A guy to his
week
credit,
1 going up against the Jets.
He always plays, but he always doesn't feel good. I'll tell you that much because I know JJ. And JJ was beat up out there playing football. TJ Watt's the same way. His legacy is more important to him. In my opinion, there's something about the Watt family that I know that their legacy is very important, and I respect that greatly about them.
Yeah, we'll see. This is going to end with the Steelers having to pay him. The one thing in all these guys, I don't see anyone missing a game. And
no, I don't either.
Because it's so costly, right? Remember when Chris Jones was like the last dude to do it and the most recent guy to do it. Yeah, right. Week 1. And then they included some incentives in his contract to allow him to get back. He had to be basically the defensive player of the year in order to get back what he missed for just 1 game. It's just, you can't miss games.
Yep. One last guy here, Terry McLaurin.
It's a tough spot. Okay, so here I was talking with folks about this yesterday. Terry got into the league. It was like week 2. He had turned 24 in his rookie year. Okay, he got a 3-year extension back in 2022. He's at the end of that, and now he's already 30. Right. So the way we talk about Cooper Kupp, the way we talk about Mike Evans, like Terry McLaurin is in that 30 and up range, but he's been in the league since 2019. So you don't think of him that way.
Yeah, that's how I was, 24-year-old rookie.
Yeah. Okay. So who is paying a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver multiple years who the deep speed, that deep downfield threat that he is that going to continue in 26 and 27? Right. So it's difficult. Then you go and you trade for Debo, and I think he's probably costing more against the cap. Terry knows that he was the good soldier for all those terrible years in Washington. He kept his mouth shut. He was the captain. And now he just had a fantastic season with Jaden Daniels. And so you want to keep that lightning in that bottle. He knows that. He's trying to leverage that. But what is that worth, not only to the Commanders, but to the rest of the league? I don't think he's going to get dealt. But is he ultimately – here's what I would say. I would wager it's going to be around $29 million per year. And I say that because T. Higgins, I think, is at 28. I think Jalen Waddle's at 28. Those are number 2 receivers on their teams, right? They'd be number 1s elsewhere. They're number 2s. Terry's the number 1 on his team. So you got to get him above the top number 2.
Yep.
So 29, and you can fake the last year. You get the average annual value. CBS Sports HQ puts up a graphic, and we show where he ranks and all that stuff, and everybody's happy.
I'll say this about Terry McLaurin and the league as a whole. Person over player is something that I've heard a lot when during the scouting process and the draft and all that stuff. Terry McLaurin's a really good person. And I'm really happy that he has, he soldiered on for so long in Washington with, bad situations and ownership. And now he's got Jaden Daniels. I hope he gets rewarded for it. Okay, we went from no shows to unhappy campers. We're going to start with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'll be quick here on Kirk. And that is that I think he realizes his lot in life. First of all, we talk about legacy, we talk about reputation. He does not want to be viewed in any sort of negative way. First of all, he's under contract. He's tried to work his way out of there. He's tried to do what he can do. That is respectful, and it has not worked. And now there's no other seat left for him. Maybe Minnesota in the future, maybe, but Pittsburgh has their guy. Tennessee has their guy. Cleveland has too many guys. New Orleans has their guys.
New York's got too many guys.
So that's it. So this is your lot in life, and you don't wait for an injury. You don't hope for an injury, but that's the best you can do right now. He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Micah Parsons.
He will be the highest paid pass rusher and potentially the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history before week 1. It actually could happen soon-ish, right? We could be talking about this late June, maybe. It's going to happen. Everybody knows it. He's played it perfectly with the Cowboys. He could have made a huge stink last year, and he did not. He has played it exceptionally.
Micah Parsons, what a freak. Okay, James Cook, running back, Buffalo Bills, guy I love a lot, and I think he's integral to their offense. What say you, JJ?
I think what he did yesterday, A, showing up to Buffalo Bills mandatory minicamp, B, facing the music and talking with the media, C, participating in minicamp and saying that he's not going to hold out in training camp and he will continue, because the difference here, because he's still in his rookie contract, he could hold out or hold in, and those fines could be waived in training camp. For a veteran, they changed this in the last CBA. For anyone who is on a second contract, you can't hold out anymore. Want your third contract, you're getting fined $40,000 a day, and they can't take it away. Guys on rookie contracts can. And James Cook, who has been kind of talking a lot more than the Buffalo Bills would want him to publicly, because the Bills have a good track record of taking care of their own up there in this regime. And he's been saying that he wants a new deal. Now he's changed. And yes, he wants a deal, but he's shut up and he's putting in the work. I think that's what the Bills want to see. And I think that will help him get rewarded by Buffalo this offseason.
Yeah, and I hope he does get rewarded, because as much as we love Josh Allen and the explosive nature of that offense, this is a bully they've built in Buffalo, and a lot of it's predicated on running the football with James Cook. Okay, so moving on here to Sauce Gardner. I got 2 more of these unhappy campers, and then we'll move into a different section.
I'm going to actually put these two together in Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, because it's the New York Jets. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Kyle. Things are different in Gotham. All right. Things are really different in Forum Park right now, where Aaron Glenn is a man on a mission. He is head down. He is focused in a way that I have seen very few first-year head coaches be, right? You got a new GM there, and Darren Muji, who they have built up this team. They like this team, all those things, right? They are not going out and handing out contracts to guys, even if they deserve it right now. They're not going to do that. This is about team right now. This is about building. They're shutting off the leaks in the building. They're moving past the Aaron Rodgers regime. It's not going to be the same old Jets.
And this is all stuff that you can't just wave your finger over. This is like difficult stuff to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I believe that they are saying, as a group, as a new regime, that, hey, this is going to be about ball. And if you guys make this about ball, trust me, we see the tape. We know who you guys are, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and others. We will take care of you. But what message is it sending necessarily to the group right now to go pay them as soon as Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji get in the office? You don't have to do that. Show up, lead the way. We're going to see you do it right in front of our eyes.
You'll get more for it.
And then we'll pay you. So I have not been on Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson contract watch, because I don't think it's going to happen.
This is just the culture they're trying to instill. They're trying to instead of showing the room a carrot and then handing it to somebody who hasn't run yet, you say everybody can get this, run fast.
And so late July, get into August, basically training camp. Then I can see it happen. Let's make sure that these guys still show up to mandatory minicamp. Let's make sure that they're doing things the right way, right?
There's a lot of boxes to check yet. Okay, so Jalen Ramsey, what will he fetch on the trade market? I feel like this is a evergreen question with Jalen Ramsey.
I mean, this is one of those NFL economic things, right? Where how much money, the more money that a team is willing to take on in acquiring Jalen Ramsey, the less the draft pick, right? So let's, for easy numbers, right? Let's say it's $20 million. And let's say if the Miami Dolphins wind up paying 19 million of it and the acquiring team gets him for the vet minimum, well, you are going to pay the Miami Dolphins for taking on that $19 million, right? But if you split it, you see the gradient, the scale here. So that's what it's going to be up to, right? The Dolphins made a mistake last year in paying Jalen Ramsey that contract extension when they didn't have to. Pat Surtain became the highest paid cornerback, and then they went and went $1 over it for some reason. They did not have to do that, and so they're paying the price for that. But he is not going to remain with the Miami Dolphins. He's been excused from mandatory minicamp. He's the only person there who has been excused from it. Right now I only see one place for him, and it's the LA Rams. The Falcons don't have the money. If they could deal Kirk Cousins, maybe they would have the money. I only see the Rams as a potential landing spot for Jalen Ramsey right now.
Okay, next up in the skill player defensive side of the ball sweepstakes, what's the best landing spot for Jair Alexander?
Dude, there's so many. When he got released the other day, I probably texted 20 different teams kind of polling around. I probably wound up hearing that he could land at a dozen teams because what you have, but here's the thing. It's a could land at a dozen teams. He is, I think, 28 years old, 2-time second team All-Pro, but he's right. But he's missed more games the last couple of years than he's played in. And so you worry about his availability, but you worry about it because you don't know on Friday if he's going to play on Sunday. This isn't like when we talked about Shaq Thompson, right? This isn't the fibula and the Achilles.
No, it's like week in, week out. How are we preparing the defense that will be available on Sunday to play? Do we have the depth to be able to have a guy like Jair Alexander on the roster who, when he is in the roster, is a lockdown corner? But when he's out of the roster, and we might find that out on Saturday in the hotel, it puts us in a bind.
And so that's ultimately what the Green Bay Packers got tired of, right? Because you're talking about a very proud franchise. Kyle, you know this very well with the Packers, right? They went out and made Jair Alexander the highest paid corner in NFL history. And then they just released him. When I just told you that a dozen teams will have interest in him, they couldn't facilitate a trade for him. And so that is embarrassing for the Packers. But they ultimately have decided that we're just going to have to win without you. And they offered him some revised deal, probably incentive laden. The point I'm going to make here is it is going to take a team to bring in Jair for a visit, get to know him. Obviously, you're going to put him through a physical, but you're going to have to figure out what this guy is all about. Because you and I can cut on the tape, and when he's out there on the field, I know the player I'm getting.
Who are you day to day? Who are you in the meeting room? How do you treat people?
And it is June 11th right now. Mini camps are almost over. Folks are going on their vacation. Who's bringing him in right now? So I would just say, based off of all that, I don't think Jair Alexander has a landing spot until late July.
Okay, I got 3 more here. I'm going to ask about Travis Hunter. How are the Jaguars going to handle his two-way reps? I've been adamant when people ask me on the street. I'm like, if the guy's playing 30 reps of defense and if he's your number 2 wide receiver and he's playing 30 reps of defense, the staff should be fired. That's what I truly believe.
Yeah, I think ultimately it reminds me a little bit of quarterback competitions where you put those guys out there on the field and the players are going to know and the coaches are going to know. Ultimately, it reveals itself.
Yep.
Is what I'm saying, right?
I think cream rises to the top.
And so right now, yeah, put him in the white jersey one day and put him in the teal jersey the next day. And let's just see. And then eventually we're going to really learn, and we're going to see in training camp what our wide receiver group looks like and who goes down with a hamstring, right? Or, oh boy, here's who's on our schedule coming up. And then you're going to make your determination. Right now, you don't have to, you can play him on both sides right now. Ultimately, he is going to play on one side of the ball. I would wager right now, second week of June, he will primarily be a corner. That's what I would say right now.
Okay. I like that. How's Anthony Richardson's shoulder going to affect the quarterback competition in Indianapolis?
So the shoulder is a concern, and it is a concern because obviously it was the AC joint that he injured and had surgery on in his rookie season.
And let's be honest, it's a concern because even when it's healthy, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
And so it's a concern to continue that because that surgery was 18 months ago. This soreness in his shoulder has happened during OTAs, right? So there are no hits. Now, look, you're throwing the ball a lot out there. There's no question about that. But you're already needing to be on a rest regimen in your third year in the NFL, a year and a half separated from your shoulder surgery. So you already know. I was told the belief is he's going to be ready for the start of training camp. He got his second opinion from Dr. Neil Elatrosh, who did his shoulder surgery. He's the preeminent doctor when it comes to this stuff out in LA. And they all said, just got to rest. So we're going to get to late July. He's going to be in training camp, and he's probably going to have some days off. He might be 3 on, 1 off. And then let's say he wins the quarterback competition, right? Let's say that. What's it going to look like when he plays on Sunday and you know he's taking hits? And then we get to Wednesday practice. Is he practicing Wednesday? Is he limited? Like, is this what you have to look forward to for the next X amount of years? And I would say right now, it's more probable than not.
He would be like Drew Brees if he were to miraculously recover and have the shoulder become a thing of the past. What a redemption arc that would be. Or he could become like so many players that I've played with that have talent and haven't been able to bounce back physically. And then, that leads to lack of availability. Next thing you know, you're the 3 guy on the roster. The next thing after that is you got a little box in front of your locker. Okay, really quick here. How will the Titans handle Cam Ward versus Will Levis?
There is no Cam Ward versus Will Levis. It is Cam Ward. Cam Ward is going to be the Titans' Week 1 starter. There is no question at all about it. We talked earlier about the Jets and not just handing stuff over, right? They're not just handing it over to Cam. And there's a lot of ways that you can skin this cat, right? Like I remember a couple of years ago, the Carolina Panthers, they said, look, Bryce Young, we drafted number 1. It was like mid-June, and they said, he's our guy, right? When Caleb Williams went to Chicago, you remember this quite well. They said, we're not screwing around here, while they were screwing around in many other places. They said, we're not screwing around here. He's going to be the guy. He's taking the 1 reps. Cam Ward is going to take the 1 reps, but whether Chad Brinker or Mike Borgonzi and Brian Callahan and that whole group come out with their chest out and say, he is our guy. You and I and everybody listening here knows it, and Cam knows it, and Will Levis knows it. So that's going to be that. Will Levis needs to continue to revive his career. Maybe ultimately he winds up getting dealt. I was a little surprised he didn't get dealt during the draft. I don't think a lot of teams wanted him. But maybe he winds up getting dealt. But there is no Cam Ward versus Will Levis. It's Cam Ward, and everybody knows it. And so they're just not going to crown him, and they're just going to go about their business.
Okay, going about our business, that's what we're going to do right after this break. We got the mailbag questions coming right up. Stick around.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
I want to give a quick shout out to our friends on YouTube, on the application formerly known as Twitter, on any other places where you receive your podcast. Thanks for listening into Pushing the Pile. We've got our mailbag section here. I got JJ with us. I'm going to go ahead and read. Should go down the list. At BWannaBeast3169 on YouTube asks, Do the Broncos carry 4 backs? Harvey, Estime, McLaughlin, Dobbins, and a fullback Burton, now with Dobbins being officially signed. I think that they probably carry 4 backs, and I definitely think that Mike Burton is a guy that they keep on the roster. You look at Sean Payton's offense, the things he tries to get accomplished, the attitude they try to play with. He's a guy that likes to involve a fullback. Mike Burton, got to play with him in Kansas City. The consummate professional, okay? This guy loves football, loves being a silent, lead by example type, is as prepared as anybody, gets the running backs as ready as anybody. So I expect these young running backs in that room to lean on a guy like Mike Burton. But short answer, I think that they are going to try all 4 of these guys, and Burton will be one of the guys that's on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to, when it comes down to roster economics, right, and arithmetic, 5 backs, right? The 4 running backs and the fullback, that's a lot to devote to a 53-man, week 1 roster. So I could see 1, maybe 2 of them winding up on a practice squad and or dealing one of them. Again, cream's going to rise to the top. You're going to get in a training camp and you're going to see. I would be surprised, though, if the Broncos devote 5 of their 53 positions to
I will say this. I agree with you, but through the preseason and training camp, they're going to keep as many of these guys on
1,000%.
as possible because they're going to run the hell out of football in the preseason. I can already tell you that. Okay, J4GV on YouTube asks, can Penix continue to build off what he showed in those 3 games, and how much of an impact can the young defensive guys and Ulbrich make? I'll answer this part about Penix. I think there's some guys that just have it, and there's a lot of guys who don't. Michael Penix Jr. is a guy who has it. Okay, we watched him go toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels in the nation's capital in primetime last year. Guy didn't blink. He can throw it all over the yard. I love the talent they have at the receiver position. Obviously, Kyle Pitts at the tight end spot's got a huge year for his career. Bijan Robinson, there's probably only 1 or 2 guys that would take over Bijan Robinson in the National Football League. I love the offensive line situation that they have there. So for Michael Penix, it's just, can he stay healthy? And if he stays healthy, he will continue to get better.
Yeah, it does. He is benefited from the NFC South as well, right? This is probably going to be another down year for that division. So that does help. The one thing, and this is kind of I shudder even when I say this, because I agree with everything that you just said, Kyle, and I certainly remember that Washington game. This is a little bit like a talk radio bit that I may do, but like, what was the Michael Penix moment? Like, what were the flat, like when you think about Michael Penix, when he came in last year, like what sort of, oh boy, I remember those throws.
Here was the moment. It's not one particular throw.
And
it's when we had questions, when we had very, very, very high hopes for Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Cousins physically fell flat on his face, didn't have the fastball, didn't have the mobility to be able to utilize play action and that zone scheme. And they brought in this cat, Michael Penix Jr., and you just put the tape on and watch the way that those guys play with a guy who gives them a chance. And when you've got a chance at the quarterback position, boy, oh boy, it's like, drinking a white Monster energy drink. And you're just,
and look, hey, look,
it was the moment for me. And it was prime time against Jaden Daniels. There wasn't a throw, but it was like gutsy play after gutsy play, layered football. I love watching the guy play.
And the coaches there love him. There's a lot of high hopes for him. Again, I'm kicking myself even acting like a shock jock, but that would be the one thing.
Okay, so this one comes from _Rob Dylan, not to be confused with Bob Dylan, great artist. Is Shamar Stewart in the right or in the wrong with his comments on his current contract situation with the Bengals? And I'm going to stand on business when I say this. I'm in agreement with Shamar Stewart. You can't put brand new language into a contract and expect a guy that was drafted as highly as Shamar Stewart to just oblige and say, sure, piss all over my contract. No, what you do is you look at what history has determined to be the norm and you follow suit. You can explain more about the language that the Bengals are trying to put in place into this rookie contract for Shamar Stewart. But from my takeaway was Shamar Stewart is absolutely right.
So to answer Rob Dylan's actual specific question. Was he wrong with his comments on his current situation? He did. I just tried to look this up. Somebody can find this, but he did say something about how if I were an owner, I'd give all my money to the players or something.
Well, sometimes you gotta.
No, you wouldn't. And he was calling out the team for being cheap, and he was calling out the team in a way that I don't know that I've ever heard a rookie call out.
It's a new league.
So that was different. I will also, but now putting that aside and answering the spirit of the question, he is absolutely right in feeling this way. I understand that the Bengals wanted new language for their contracts. And let me be clear about what this is, because I think a lot of people do understand this. He's a first-round rookie. He has 4 years worth of guarantees. The contract now says if you default, which more or less means if you get suspended for a game or two for anything under the sun, right? It could be PEDs. It could be you got ejected from a game, right? A nasty hit, whatever. That would then trigger your guarantees to void. Now, it would then be up to the team to say, well, hey, look, you should have never gotten ejected for that hit anyway. We're going to pay you. Don't worry about it.
But it's the Bengals.
And it's a contract, and we have contracts for a reason, and we sign things for a reason. And if all we did were just take people's word for stuff, then we wouldn't have contracts. And so he is right, absolutely, in standing up for this. The Bengals, frankly, they do have the ability to change their contracts. They have the ability to say, you know what? I see the way this is moving. Remember Azeez Al-Shaair?
Oh, yeah.
The hit that he put on Trevor Lawrence?
Oh, yeah.
He had something in his contract, Kyle, that said if you got suspended more than 2 games, your guarantee is void. He got suspended 3 games. So he is not making guaranteed money this year for the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans have said, we're going to take care of you. But again, that stuff like that is what Shamar Stewart and his agents and the NFL Players Association are guarding against, and he has every right to do so.
You know who else is taking care of players that are in trouble? It's old Jimmy Haslam. And our question here is
what a segue, Kyle.
Our question here is from Cinematics on YouTube. When's Jimmy Haslam selling the team?
What team? The Columbus Crew?
You know what? I heard a baseball player talk about ownership and management, where it's like relegation needs to be a thing. If you don't have success, you let somebody else have a crack at it. And I thought it was really interesting. And I wonder if we can put in place some sort of monarchy type deal.
You know, one of the interesting things is like we just talked about the Bengals. Jimmy Haslam's not a cheap owner. They spend. They do a lot.
Oh, that place is sweet.
And so, first of all, to answer the question, he is not selling the team.
Yeah,
You know, he is. They're building that Brook Park Stadium. Cleveland be damned. I don't care what you're saying, county and city or whatever. We're not staying on the waterfront. You have never developed this area in the 2 decades plus that it's been there. So we're moving it. We're going to Brook Park, and hopefully we're going to bring Taylor Swift and a Final Four out there to that dome eventually in the years to come, right? So that
Morgan Wallen show.
But I do. It's funny because a lot of people get on owners for being cheap, and Jimmy Haslam has not been cheap. And then they get on him for being meddlesome.
He hasn't been cheap, but he spent money in the wrong way.
And then they get on him for being meddlesome. And he is less meddlesome today than he was in the Johnny Manziel years. But you look at what will go down as probably the worst transaction in NFL history, trading for and then paying a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. And he was very, very prominent in the execution of that acquisition.
So I've got a story about the Haslam family. Very, very nice people, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm golfing, and I'm not going to dox the Haslams, but I'm golfing at a very, very nice place in the Northwest, in the mountains. A couple of years ago, I was in a member guest with a college teammate and frat brother of mine from Florida State. He sells insurance with his dad. That's how they got to this golf place.
Okay.
And, we're having beers. It's beautiful, the mountain air, high altitude. These beers are strong. And the the twosome that we're playing against, well dressed, they're old, old school looking, classy, classic,
genteel,
nice clothes, everything. Yeah, the elites. And the one guy was like, "Hey, you look like a football player, and you got a pretty good swing. And were you an athlete?" I said, "Yeah, I played football." He goes, "Where'd you play?" I said, "Chicago." I said, "Do you like football? Who's your team?" Well, we like the Browns. I said, "Well, that sucks." And he goes, "Yeah, well, we own them." And my buddy looked at me, like my buddy standing across the green, and he knew, but he didn't know that I didn't know. And he looked at me like, "You dumbass." And I just remember spending time with that family the rest of the day and just raving about how awesome the city of Cleveland was. Oh, the air show in July and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I was trying to make up lost ground, but that's my Haslam story.
No, that's a good story. I enjoy the Haslams. I enjoy that family. I always appreciate the time that they give me when I go visit Cleveland or see them at the league meetings. And I will say this. I very much believe that Jimmy has understood a number of his flaws and faults from years ago. I do believe that he believes in Andrew Berry and his vision for this team and Kevin Stefanski. And we'll see. We'll see if ultimately trading away Travis Hunter for Mason Graham and a slew of picks, because that wins on the trade value chart. Yep. There is no doubt that wins on the trade value chart.
If you hit with one other player outside of Mason Graham, then it's like, well, we're great.
But if Travis Hunter in 15 years from now is walking across that stage in Canton, Ohio, you lost the trade.
Yeah. And now here's another team that will be debating on whether or not they lost the transaction of Sam Darnold getting out of town. So Floating Alpacas on YouTube asks, when will you treat Minnesota as contenders? Their ownership and fans clearly view them as such. Why don't you? Surely it can't be because of one player out of 53, right? You are right. Okay? It's a quarterback-driven league. I won't think of the Minnesota Vikings as contenders until I see proof in the pudding. J.J. McCarthy playing quarterback against grown men, being a badass, making plays. Okay? I saw from Sam Darnold, but he's a salty vet. He's a former first-round pick as well, and he had to prove himself over the course of what seems to be an effing decade to get onto that mountain in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. I got to see it from J.J. McCarthy, not only because I haven't seen him in a helmet playing in the National Football League, but because he's recovering from injury as well. Let's not forget that it's not just, is J.J. McCarthy going to be good? Is J.J. McCarthy's knee healthy? Is J.J. McCarthy confident enough physically to stand in the pocket when they get out of shorts and they put pants on and they start hitting each other? What does J.J. McCarthy look like? If he does look the part, then I will oblige you and treat them as contenders.
Oblige. I hear you, Lieutenant Aldo Rain. Look, for me, I see it as I'm right there with you when it comes to J.J. McCarthy. They have built up the interior of that offensive line. They have built up the interior of the defensive line. That is what they went after in free agency. You believe in Brian Flores in this defense, but they just lost Cam Bynum there. And they're going to have to figure out another corner position. Okay, it is all about J.J. McCarthy, along with the fact, truly, maybe you feel there's a lot of the taste in our mouths from the last two Vikings games, right? Against Detroit and against LA. And it's like, well, was it the Scooby-Doo reveal at the end of the season? You take off the mask, it's like, aha, these are the Vikings we always knew they were. Yep. And I don't necessarily feel that way, but because Sam Darnold played a way that we hadn't seen Sam Darnold play over the span of 15 plus games, and because we have never seen J.J. McCarthy play professional American gridiron football, we can't put them in an echelon with the Philadelphia Eagles or with the LA Rams, who they lost to, or with the San Francisco 49ers, who everybody's back and everybody's healthy and everybody's happy. I can't put them there. I can't. Could they get there? I think you and I both agree they could get there. But as it stands today, no. Floating Alpacas, I can't put them right there.
Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. JJ, I always love talking to you. Love listening to you. You look at things in a different lens than I do. As an offensive lineman, I see things in a certain way. You, obviously, a brilliant, Rhodes Scholar type. It's always fun. That's the end of the show. I'm going to be back on Monday. I'm going to be drafting every defense in the National Football League. Essentially, a fun way to power rank. That's what I'm going to be doing on Monday. Remember to like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube page for everyone listening to the audio-only version. Sup. Make sure you download, follow, leave a 5-star review, and tell your friends to listen and watch the pod. Until next time, JJ, thank you very much.
Appreciate you,
I'll
Kyle.
holla. Keep pushing.